Once upon a time, long ago, in 2002, NBA Live '03 did something that no other video game had ever done. Care to guess? Okay, I'll tell you. It was the first video game soundtrack to be certified platinum. Yes, over 1 million copies sold of the EA Sports game soundtrack. But while NBA Live might have done it the biggest, it wasn't the first game to feature a legendary soundtrack, and it wouldn't be the last. Sports games are different from all other video games because of the unique need for what we can call menu music. Sports games typically have little to no dialogue, and active playtime is as much in head-to-head competition on the court, field, or rink as it is in between game menus. Because of that, the music is so much more important than in other genres like sandbox, combat, co-op games, or shooters intended to be played with someone else. Over time, the soundtracks of our games went from core memories that cemented these games in our hearts and instead became seemingly random playlists of songs we forgot overnight. So how do we get here? And who's to blame for this monumental decline? Well, let's talk about it. By the way, I'm Ram, and I love talking about all things sports related. Subscribe, like, and comment for more. Let's get into it. In order to really understand the heartbreak of the original soundtrack fall off, we have to take a look at where we came from and just how monumental things once were. No conversation on video game soundtracks is complete without mentioning Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Released in 1999, the Tony Hawk game was one of the first sports video games to focus on its soundtrack, and the result was legendary. Critics dubbed the soundtrack as perfect for the experience and the time. Tony Hawk Pro Skater would follow up on this perfection a couple years later with a game many call the greatest video game ever, period. 25 years later, and journalists are still in awe at how classic this game's soundtrack was. For myself, I was a whopping 2 years old when the game came out, so I didn't really get to play that one, but I would get to experience some of the later games in the series. And I was old enough to experience the soundtrack of Tony Hawk's little cousin, the EA Sports Skate series. I was but a wee lad when the original Skate came out, but this was one of those games that really introduced me to the variety and depth of music there was out there to explore. Everything from Hustlin' by Rick Ross, to Lounge Jack by Nirvana, to Give It To Me Baby by Rick James. My young ears were dancing to this soundtrack as I skated around in the game for hours. But this was only the beginning. Skate 2 and 3 kept it going with everything from the Beastie Boys all the way to Young Jeezy. And entire generations of us grew up on the soundtracks of these games. And they introduced us to more than just new music, but to the culture of skating and biking. And this really is the beauty of sports video games and why they matter. Video games are all about the experience and the opportunity to be immersed into a world, culture, or life different than your routine. These soundtracks took us outside of the gameplay and brought these worlds to real life. In this generation, EA Sports continually raised the bar when it came to the soundtracks of the time. And let me know if I'm missing anything here, but for me, the standouts will always be FIFA, so known for their soundtracks that we still have what we call a FIFA song today. A song best associated with the series and the hours we spent listening to the songs as we played through trainings or in the menus trying to find the best foreign international from Australia. As soon as I hear the song Kids from FIFA '09, I'm instantly thrown back to that era on the games and the great memories, ultimate nostalgia, or the old Maddens. I'll always love that Madden '04 game, you know, the one with Mike Vick on the cover. And while the gameplay was great, I think the soundtrack might have been even better. Back in an age where the game was still pure, you know, before Ultimate Team and microtransactions, that soundtrack was a staple of the modern NFL for the time. Speaking of the NFL Street Series was another EA original that was always full of hits and made the hits on the field feel all that much grittier. Truth be told, all of the Street series really. NFL Street, FIFA Street, and the GOAT, NBA Street Volume 2. Ask any old head what their favorite sports video game soundtrack is, and it'll probably take not even 3 or 4 guesses to get to NBA Street Volume 2. If you've never played the game, this was a PlayStation 2 classic that I spent hours playing as a kid growing up. The game was centered around old school street ball with legends like Larry Bird and Dr. Dre, and the soundtrack featured legends of hip hop of the same weight. I think about the classics from guys like Pete Rock, Nate Dogg, Redman, and as a kid growing up in VA, I felt like I was at Rucker Park playing the game in the mecca of basketball. And that's what soundtracks are supposed to be all about. For years, EA carried the torch, but would eventually pass the baton. And we'll get back to that later. But their title was then passed on to Take-Two Entertainment with the 2K series. For years, NBA 2K had grown into a formidable rival to the NBA Live series. Even though NBA Live had a 5-year head start, the series would fall off from the highs of the late 2000s. So much so that in 2012, EA would cancel the game altogether. And it might not be a coincidence that 2K would take over the mantle in 2K13 and give a contender for the greatest video game soundtrack of all time. Handpicked and curated by Jay-Z, I'll never forget turning on the game for the first time and hearing, "This is a public service announcement. Sponsored by Just Blaze and the good folks at Rockefeller Records." Absolutely legendary. Everything from U2, Nas, Eric B., Rakim, Coldplay, Daft Punk, Jay-Z himself. This soundtrack was so good that it still gets plays today as a separate playlist of just quality music. 2K would release a few more classic soundtracks over the decade and cement itself as the premier basketball game for the culture. But you know what they say about all good things, and the end was near. So when was this decline? Well, to find the culprit, it might be best to start with Madden. Yeah, surprise, surprise. That same year, 2K dropped one of the best soundtracks ever in 2013. Madden decided to officially remove the original soundtrack from their 2013 game. Madden had killed the soundtrack in 2012 and was the first Madden without a soundtrack for as long as soundtracks had been a thing. Without a soundtrack, the game had an orchestra playing NFL theme music. And not a horrible idea, but the soul of the game from earlier generations was gone. It would be almost 7 years until Madden added back the soundtrack, an era where Madden decided to cut the variety and basically give us all rap. And most of the fans of the past didn't like it. Truth be told, I don't know if anyone liked it. None of the old school classics that older games wove in expertly, or the variety of genres with rock, metal, pop, rap, hip hop. It just felt empty. And not only was it empty, but it was also corporatized. This was the same era when Madden removed a mention of Colin Kaepernick from one of its songs, as if his name was a slur. Around the same time Cap was being blackballed from the NFL. The same theme held with other EA series, and pretty much across the board with sports video games. I've talked on my channel before about how the landscape of sports games changed and fell off over time. And around the same time as the quality of the games went down, the music industry was crumbling all the same. While Spotify and Apple Music killed the days of buying music and records, it turned to the record label execs to become the main drivers of music that people were listening to. What was the result? Well, instead of video game soundtracks serving as the mainstay for appreciating classic songs and curated playlists designed to fit the games they were in, they instead became just random playlists of whatever songs record execs were paid to push to the game companies. This New York Times article from 2024 details the process to how these songs for Madden are chosen every year. While my favorite Madden of all time had a playlist of songs like Pump It Up by Joe Budden with Outkast and Killer Mike, along with songs from Blink-182 and Alien Ant Farm, 20 years later, the article details how music execs from Sony and other major labels just send in hundreds of songs to the EA team, and then the EA team picks from that list. The result? 70 songs, varying from Bossman D-Lo to Doja Cat and Coi Leray. And what about the days of the FIFA song and the world-bending FIFA soundtracks that got everyone united in the variety of music? Well, the most recent EA FC game, the new rendition of FIFA, after EA lost the FIFA rights, gave us 117 different songs in its soundtrack. More like a playlist from the record execs of who's next, without any real clear direction or that FIFA sound we grew to love. Even looking at the 2024 release of the most hotly anticipated sports game possibly ever, with EA's College Football 25, the EA team actually decided to just include a compilation of drumline playlists rather than actually having a soundtrack detailing college music. This is the state of video game soundtracks in 2025. So what does the future look like? And where do we go from here? While the future remains undecided, I have a fear that things truly will go down from this point. I can see a future where these games collaborate with Apple or Spotify and allow for fully customizable soundtracks playing in the game in the background, allowing players to play alongside their own music or playlists of their choice in-game, rather than muting the screens and popping in some earphones. This might seem like a reasonable idea, and even preferable to some of the random soundtracks we've seen in recent years. But this future would lose sight of the potential beauty of the original soundtrack in sports games. No longer will we have customized songs, hand-picked, made to accompany the game like the classic NBA Live 03 soundtrack, or we'd lose the beauty of the FIFA song that still brings back that splash of nostalgia associated with playing our favorite game years ago. I dream of a future for these games where we have the opportunity to incorporate some really unique innovations through the sound of the game. Imagine custom selected songs based on the time of the year, or based on the situation you're in within the game. We love video games because of just how much space there is for creativity. But instead, the origins of the sports video game soundtrack may just end up as another relic from the past. We may never again get another classic soundtrack like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 or NBA 2K13. But maybe, just maybe, the original sports soundtrack of the future will exceed our expectations and bring back memories from an ancient history. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything and what you want to see from sports video game soundtracks of the future. But thank you for watching. Until next time, peace.